Okay, God wants me to post this, so I'm gonna. So, okay. Okay. There are two people. Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna. This girl, Joanna, was chosen and created and molded by evil God enemies and was part of the family chosen by the devil against me. Michael Patterson's wife was the most evil, sickening, unthinkable child that evil God enemies could find. Evil God enemies taught Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna, after they chose crime and evil side and bad side. So good gods tried to get them to not ever even think about it or do it. But of course they kept fighting and fighting and fighting to be with evil God enemies. So Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna learned how to murder the greatest Bonianica god for the greatest Bonianica powers and seem invincible and say that they were like evil god enemies of invincible, powerful magnitude. And they learned how to do it from evil god enemies that steal my powers and scare and terrify all gods. Well, Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna acted like holy saints and decided to teach everybody to become these invincible things. But they could have less of Bonianica powers, and everybody who did this to me originally could have all the Bonianica powers. So, evil god enemies, Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna had the worst, nightmare, horrifying piles of my powers by murdering me in the biggest, worst ways. And making sure they always murdered me with evil god enemies in the biggest, worst ways to get the biggest amount of powers. And then Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna controlled and forced the control through evil god enemies and more of how much Bonianica powers everybody else could have. And then everybody got high on their own weird stink from stealing invincible powers that don't belong to them and pretending they were God. And now this is what it is. 5 billion tons of murder-induced weirdos that pretended to be invincible gods have lost all my powers, lost everything, and now have to die for all of it forever. And there's nothing else. That's the end of the story. But yeah, did Michael Patterson's wife and Joanna get even gods and angels to get high on the stink of murdering me, stealing my powers, and pretending to be things that they weren't? Yes. You're not going to find that this story gets any better. You're going to find that the end of the world is the most scary, horrifying nightmare ever known. Now, from these stupid humans all the way to evil god enemies to good gods, everyone is dead, stuck, and fucked. And they're just going to rot in never-ending bad things, trying to kill or take down or destroy everybody and anybody else. Didn't you ever wonder about these end of the world books and why the end of the world book would everybody who was so drenched in a vision or a talk with God, everybody who died and came back, those books were horrifying. End of the world books were always this really bad, sad, horrifying story about people living underground, desperate to get off of Earth. Do you really think a Hitler, one human Hitler, could become that miserable and bad? No. This planet joined with gods and murdered in secret all these years. Now that gods and these humans are going to be dead for everything they've done, they're going to be on an overdone mission to just kill all the time because they have nothing left. And there's nothing good in anything for them forever anyway. You know, sometimes you just don't understand. So the end of the world Bible seems so Book of Revelation scary. And all these end of the world books just, what the hell, but like it's a good book. But see how it comes together and proves that the end of the world is just really not scary. And God's predicted that it probably would be, because stealing the powers of the greatest gods has always abortion problem, but you always will pay for it. It's one of the most serious crimes there is. In addition to even looking at a guy wrong and all kinds of other things. So like they weren't going to be able to survive it. And it was just never going to matter, and nobody was ever going to care. But it's a good time to talk about coronavirus, people. When people got coronavirus, they had to understand. When people got coronavirus, they had to sit in coronavirus, the worst suffering a human body could be put through at the hands of punishment of God, automatic reality. While they were dying unthinkably as humans, they had to sit and talk to gods about unthinkable spiritual death and war at the same time, as well as unthinkable soul destruction and death and suffering for all these crimes. So did 2 countries convince everyone to do something against me to steal my powers? Did most people laughing around the world know they were doing something destructive and gross to the death of God and getting some kind of stolen power or benefit? Yeah. So it's instant guilt. They die really badly. See how, like, you don't want to put the end of the world together, like there's nothing good in it. You just want to harp and harp and harp to keep good people around good gods for good options. And kind of hope everybody just never cares about what else could ever exist. Pretty much.